Working as a freelance designer, I was constantly belittled by Ava's male best friend, who claimed my modest income made me unworthy of her. The intimate photos they shared were like needles in my heart, and I was even pressured to step aside and let them be together. I finally decided to walk away and face my brain surgery alone, but not before using my last bit of strength to dismantle their careers entirely. I'd already made up my mind that I would never sacrifice my own dignity for someone else again. While my wife, Ava Thompson, was clinking glasses with her favorite male colleague at a corporate party, I was finishing my packing. I dropped the divorce papers on the kitchen table and walked out the door without a second thought. Just before I stepped out, I couldn't resist sending one last iMessage. I wrote, "I'm out. The spot next to her is all yours now." Roughly 30 minutes later, my phone rang. "James, are you quite finished with this little tantrum?" she asked. I let out a dry laugh. "I don't need you anymore, Ava. To be honest, I couldn't care less who you're sleeping with." There was a sharp intake of breath, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely rattled. It was my birthday, and I personally drove Ava to her office in downtown Los Angeles. As we pulled up at the curb, I looked at her and said, "It's my birthday today. Please come home early, because there is something important I need to discuss with you." She remained silent for a long moment before finally nodding her head. We had been married for 3 years now. Ava was a high-level executive at a major firm, while I worked as a freelance designer. I took on various design projects and made a decent living, but my income didn't even come close to what Ava brought home. Most men would probably feel emasculated by a wife who out-earned them, but it never felt that way. I first laid eyes on Ava when I was 16 years old, and I was completely captivated the moment I saw her. She was 3 years my senior. During my freshman year of high school, she returned as a distinguished alumna to give a keynote speech. Bathed in the afternoon sun, her profile looked like a masterpiece, and she seemed to radiate a divine light that left me breathless. After she finished, I tried to make my way through the crowd to get a photo with her, but she was so surrounded that I couldn't get anywhere near her. In a moment of desperation, I shouted out, "Excuse me, Miss Angel." She turned around and flashed a smile right at me, and I quickly snapped a picture. That was the very first photo I ever took of her. From then on, I followed in her footsteps, eventually getting accepted into the same university where I became her junior. I spent 3 years chasing her before she finally gave in and agreed to start dating me. Honestly, if it hadn't been for her parents constantly pressuring her to settle down, I probably never would have had the chance to marry her. But after we tied the knot, I realized that you can give your entire life to someone, and their heart will still remain cold to you. It was my birthday, so I had ordered a special cake and spent the entire afternoon preparing a 4-course meal. I sat there waiting for her to come home from work. I waited from 6 in the evening until 9, but the front door never opened. Eventually, I lost my patience and tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail every time. Just as I was about to give up, our frenemy, Ethan Davis, sent me a video. In the clip, Ava had her arm linked through Ethan's, and they both looked like they were having the time of their lives. A crowd of their coworkers surrounded them, cheering and popping bottles of champagne. "Hey James, Ava just closed that massive deal in San Francisco. We're all out celebrating her big win, so don't be a buzzkill." That text from Ethan completely destroyed the last shred of hope I was holding on to. I should have seen this coming long ago. I was always the lowest priority in Ava's life. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I reheated the cold dinner, sat down alone at the table, and ate every bite in silence. Afterward, I opened the cake box and lit the candles. I stared at the flickering flames for a moment before blowing them out and making a silent wish. When I was 16, I wished to spend forever with Ava Thompson. Now that I am 26, my only wish is to let her go and finally give myself a chance to truly live. A year ago, I started to notice that Ava and Ethan were becoming more than just friends. She always referred to him as her best guy friend, but whenever she was stressed or tired, he was always the first person she reached out to. Whenever Ava struggled with a difficult project at work, Ethan was there to handle the heavy lifting for her. Initially, I convinced myself they were just a great professional team, but I eventually realized that the way he looked at her was anything but professional. The physical boundaries had blurred long ago. Shortly after that realization, I began receiving mysterious, anonymous messages on my phone. My photo gallery slowly became a graveyard of their intimacy, filled with candid shots of them together. The first time I saw them, I felt my world crumbling, and I confronted Ava about it that same night. She just looked at me with pure annoyance. "James, it was just a hug. He's my friend. Can you please stop acting like a jealous child?" I begged her to keep her distance from him. I even went as far as having a female friend hug me in front of her just to see if she would get jealous. Ava saw through my desperate little game immediately. She gave me the silent treatment for an entire week, proving that trying to manipulate her would never work. After that, I stopped fighting. I put on a mask and pretended to be oblivious to everything. Deep down, I made a silent pact with myself. Once I collected 100 photos of their betrayal, I would walk away for good. However, I didn't even make it to 100 before I hit my breaking point. Every new photo was like a fresh stab wound. I was bleeding emotionally, and my vision would blur with pain every time I checked my phone. It was past midnight, and Ava was still nowhere to be found. My birthday ended in total silence. All the things I had planned to say to her felt utterly pointless now. I dragged my suitcase out of the closet and began packing a few essentials. I placed the signed divorce papers prominently on the table and walked out without looking back. I knew that if I didn't leave now, I might never find the courage to do it again. Early the next morning, I caught the first flight to Chicago. I wasn't going there for a vacation. I was going there for something far more critical. Mr. Miller, the neurosurgery department at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, is one of the best in the country. If you seek treatment there, you might actually have a fighting chance. Those are the words my local doctor had told me. I had a tumor growing in my brain. Lately, I had been fainting frequently, and there were terrifying moments where my vision would simply cut to black. The neurosurgeon explained that the tumor was already pressing against my optic nerve. If I waited any longer, I would likely lose my sight entirely. The truth was, I wasn't even close to being ready for the end. The situation was far more dire than I had anticipated. The doctors told me that, at this stage, they could only hope to slow the progression of the disease. As for Ava, I forced myself to stop thinking about her. The second I stepped off the plane, my phone buzzed with a call from Ava. "James, what the hell are you doing? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Her voice was raspy, and she sounded absolutely livid. I looked up at the clear blue Chicago sky and felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. "Ava," I said calmly, "yesterday was my birthday." The line went quiet for a few heartbeats before she muttered, "I'm sorry, I didn't let her finish. I heard you closed the San Francisco deal. Congratulations." I was actually surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Just sign the divorce papers. I'll be back in about a month to finalize things." To my surprise, she didn't blow up like she usually did. Instead, her voice remained oddly flat. "If you're in a bad mood, taking a trip might be good for you. But let's not talk about divorce right now." I opened my mouth to respond, but the line had already gone dead. I gave a bitter, weary smile. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a notification. She had transferred a significant amount of money to my account, more than enough to live comfortably for a month. The tragic irony was that time was the one thing I didn't have. After checking into the hospital, I decided to take a walk through the nearby university campus. This was my alma mater, the prestigious school I had worked so hard to get into just so I could be near Ava. I had spent 4 years here, yet looking back, it all felt like a fleeting moment. The tree-lined walkways looked exactly the same, and the breeze felt familiar against my skin. As I walked, I couldn't help but remember all the times I had carefully staged accidental meetings with her. Every time I bumped into her on a street corner, she would give me a knowing smile. "James, that's the 3rd time today. Is there something you're trying to tell me?" she would ask. My face would turn bright red, and I'd stammer out something like, "Do you like barbecue ribs? I can make some for you." Ava was used to expensive gifts and designer bags, so the idea of a guy cooking her a homemade meal actually caught her off guard. I won her over with a single plate of ribs. Eventually, It was over another dinner that we finally made our relationship official. She finished her meal, wiped her mouth, and looked me in the eyes. "So, do you want to try being official?" she asked. In that exact moment, a blinding pain shot through my head, forcing me to double over. The agony was explosive, and my vision went dark. I fumbled for my medication and swallowed 2 pills dry. It took several minutes before the throbbing slowed to a dull ache. My phone buzzed with another message from that anonymous number. "You think running away solves anything? Just give up already, James." This was the first text they had sent since the flurry of photos. Clearly, someone was getting impatient. I typed back, "You can have her. I'm done." I blocked the number immediately and spent another hour wandering the campus, trying to leave every last bit of my lingering feelings behind. Once I felt empty, I headed back to the hospital. To prepare for the upcoming procedures, the medical staff shaved my head completely. Staring at the bald, bruised man in the mirror, I felt a wave of profound sadness wash over me. But the harassment didn't stop. New anonymous accounts kept spamming my phone with messages. Finally, a video file arrived, and against my better judgment, I clicked play. The video showed Ava and Ethan in a dark, intimate lounge. They were sitting incredibly close, their fingers interlaced, laughing in a way that made my stomach churn. "So, this is what you meant by me needing a vacation, Ava? You just wanted me out of the way so the two of you could play house." I took a shaky breath, only to be interrupted by another notification. "Leave her already. You aren't in her league." It was pathetic. I had already checked out of the marriage, but it seemed Ava wasn't ready to let her safety net go just yet. It made sense. As a high-ranking executive, a public cheating scandal would absolutely incinerate her career. Unfortunately, my anonymous benefactor clearly hadn't considered the professional fallout. Or rather, they simply didn't care about the consequences for her. They probably assumed I was the type of man who would just suffer in silence and have a quiet argument behind closed doors. They thought I was safe to bully. What a group of pathetic clowns. I didn't even bother replying before blocking them again. When Ava called me later that afternoon, I had just finished charging several $1,000s to her credit card for my medical expenses. Between the surgery deposit and the various tests, the bill was staggering. The lead surgeon reviewed my charts, looked up at me, and gave me a kind, reassuring smile. "Don't worry, son. We're going to get through this together," he said. My throat tightened, and I fought back tears. I had been entirely alone since I left Los Angeles. Once I was admitted, the staff realized I had no family visiting, and their expressions softened with pity. They went out of their way to be extra attentive, giving me a sense of warmth I hadn't felt in a very long time. That was when Ava's call interrupted the silence. "James, what's going on? You've spent a fortune today. Are you actually feeling better, or just wasting money?" Her tone was clipped, and even over the phone, I could tell she was in a foul mood. "What's the matter, Ava? Did you suddenly grow a conscience?" I certainly hadn't seen any sign of one. She was silent for a moment before asking, "When are you coming home? My parents keep asking where you disappeared to." It had been exactly 1 week since I walked out. I had tied up all my loose ends and had just officially checked into the ward. There was no way I was going back. Just then, a nurse's voice echoed from the hallway. "Room 28. I'm here for your blood work." "Are you in a hospital?" she asked sharply. I almost laughed out loud. It was clear she hadn't been home in days. If she had stepped foot in the house, she would have seen the medical report sitting right on the coffee table. I wasn't feeling well, so I came in for some tests. I replied vaguely. I paused for a beat. "Ava, have you even been home since I left?" I waited for her to lie to me. If she could give me even a semi-plausible excuse, I might have tried to believe her. She hesitated before saying, "I've been buried in work. I've practically been living at the office. Or at Ethan's place," I added. It wasn't a question, it was a fact. Almost exactly as I said it. My phone chimed with a new notification. More photos arrived, time-stamped from the previous night. Ava was fast asleep in the pictures, with a man curled up behind her, holding her close in bed. They looked so peaceful together, wrapped in each other's arms. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "Did you sign the papers yet?" Consider that $50,000 I spent today your early divorce settlement. Ava's temper flared immediately. In your dreams, James, what is this fresh hell you're starting? I've told you 1,000 times, he is just a friend. You've clearly spent too much time cooped up in the house. Your brain is rotting. I'm telling you, knock it off right now, she screamed. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Ava, if I died tomorrow, would you even care? Not a bit, she snapped. The words left her mouth before she could think, though she quickly tried to backtrack. James, just come home and we can talk about this like adults. I let out a long sigh. I couldn't believe getting a divorce was going to be this difficult. I was about to hang up when I heard Ethan's voice in the background. Is he giving you a hard time about me again? Ava? Honestly, I should have stayed away if he's going to be like this. I told you, James has always been petty. Just ignore him. He's probably just bored because he has nothing to do all day. I didn't wait to hear the rest and simply hung up. A split second later, the familiar, white-hot pain exploded in my skull. Fighting through the vertigo, I opened my phone and posted a single status update to Facebook. I'm officially out. The stage is all yours now. I tagged both Ava and Ethan in the post. I didn't care if people thought I was being petty. Ava had just secured that San Francisco deal, and my public post was enough to make her partners reconsider the optics of the entire collaboration. While waiting for my final scans, I wandered into the hospital's courtyard. I snapped a few photos of the scenery and uploaded them to Facebook with the caption, "Beautiful day for a fresh start." Her call came through almost instantly. James, you are absolutely repulsive. Are you really trying to destroy my reputation? Why don't you just do the world a favor and drop dead? Hearing her venomous words, I felt nothing. It was as if a final, thin cord holding my heart together had finally snapped. In the distance, I could hear a nurse calling for a doctor, but it was drowned out by Ava's shrieking. James, how long are you going to keep up this pathetic act? When I finally came to, the lead surgeon was standing over me with a grim expression. James, where's your family? We need to speak with them. I shook my head weakly. I don't have anyone. Just give it to me straight. I can take it. My parents divorced when I was 10 and quickly started their own families. Neither of them ever looked back. I learned early on how to be alone and how to carry my own weight. I saw a flicker of sympathy in the doctor's eyes. The results aren't good, James. The tumor is aggressive and spreading rapidly. Even with surgery, your chances of survival are only about 30%. And if I don't do the surgery, my heart felt like a lead weight in my chest as I looked him in the eye. How long do I have? The doctor hesitated. Without intervention, you're looking at 3 months at most, perhaps less. I knew he was being optimistic with that 3-month estimate. The symptoms were accelerating too fast. The mild dizzy spells had turned into agonizing migraines and bouts of total darkness. The doctor wasn't exaggerating. Mr. Miller, you're young. You have to hold on to some hope. I gave him a weak, tired smile and finally nodded. I decided to go through with the surgery. A 30% chance was better than 0, and it was worth the gamble. Once I gave my consent, the medical team began drafting a surgical plan, and I did everything they asked. Hospital policy usually required a family member's signature for a procedure this invasive. I insisted on signing for myself and drafted a legal waiver stating that I accepted all risks and that the hospital was not liable for a negative outcome. By the time the paperwork was finalized, 3 days had slipped by. Online, the scandal had reached a fever pitch, with everyone on social media dissecting my marriage to Ava. Someone had even found our wedding photos and juxtaposed them with the leaked shots of her and Ethan. The internet was absolutely on fire with speculation. Being stuck in the hospital, I tried to stay off my phone, but the notifications were relentless. I hadn't leaked those photos, but seeing them still felt like a physical blow to the chest. Suddenly, another agonizing wave of pain crashed through my skull. I couldn't handle it anymore. I curled into a fetal position, my body trembling as cold sweat drenched my hospital gown. In one of the photos, Ava's collar had slipped down to reveal her bare shoulder. Ethan was leaning in close, his forehead resting against the side of her neck. They were so physically intimate that no sane person would believe they were just friends. I collapsed onto the bed, My face drained of color as the world started to fade to black. Right then, my phone started ringing with Ava's ID. I used every ounce of strength I had left to answer it. Her voice was like a physical assault. "James, have you lost your mind? Get back here right now and fix this mess. The board has suspended me because of your little stunt. Are you happy now?" I gritted my teeth against the pain and forced the words out. "Ava, I want a divorce. If we split, you can finally be with him in public. Stop lying to yourself." "Not a chance, James," she spat. "Even if you drop dead tomorrow, you are still mine." She slammed the phone down. The darkness finally swallowed me whole, and I passed out. When I regained consciousness, the hospital room was eerily silent. I realized I couldn't see clearly anymore, so I frantically pressed the call button for the nurse. "Mr. Miller, we can't wait any longer. The tumor is moving too fast." I sat in silence for a long time before finally saying the words. "Let's do the surgery." I knew that no matter what happened, I wouldn't regret trying. When Ava was screaming at me, I wasn't even angry. I was just profoundly sad. Since we were still legally married, the internet was treating me like some tragic victim, a role I never wanted to play. Honestly, I hated the public pity. I just wanted the person who had been harassing me with those photos to stop winning. 30 minutes later, the nurses were wheeling my gurney into the surgical suite. The anesthesia took hold, and the world faded away. When I finally opened my eyes again, I found myself standing in the middle of our living room back in Los Angeles. Seeing Ava sitting there, I froze. How was I back home? Did the surgery work? "Ava, I started to speak, but she stood up from the sofa and walked directly toward me. Then the impossible happened. She walked straight through my body as if I wasn't even there. I stood frozen, my voice trapped in my throat. It took a long, terrifying moment to realize the truth. I was a ghost. I looked down at my hands and tried to reach out for her, but my fingers passed through the air. The realization hit me like a physical weight. I was dead. I had died on that operating table in Chicago. The tumor had been far more invasive than the surgeons expected. When they opened my skull, the internal pressure caused a massive hemorrhage. Despite their best efforts to save me, I didn't make it. That 30% chance of survival had failed me. I stood there in a daze, suddenly remembering that I was still legally married to Ava. It was almost poetic that Ava would still be tied to me in death. My last Facebook post had sent the internet into a frenzy, and amateur sleuths were now tearing her life apart. I watched as she rushed to the front door to let Ethan in. They sat together in the living room, frantically trying to figure out how to handle the PR disaster. I didn't want to hear their schemes and was about to leave, but Ethan's voice stopped me. "We need James to make a public statement. It'll be worth more than 1,000 denials from us. Just offer him money. Give him whatever he wants to shut him up. If you don't fix this, you're going to lose your job. There are plenty of people at the firm waiting for you to fail." Ethan was right, but he didn't realize that I was beyond their reach now. I was dead. There were no more favors I could do for them. I sat on the sofa and watched Ava dial my number repeatedly, only to be met with my voicemail. Of course it was off. Dead men don't charge their phones. As the calls continued to fail, Ava's face contorted with rage. Finally, she hurled her phone across the room. "That bastard is doing this on purpose," she screamed. Even now, her first instinct was to blame me for her problems. I suddenly found myself wondering what had happened to the medical report I had left for her. I scanned the living room, checking the coffee table, the sideboards, and the dining area, but the paper was gone. I knew for a fact that I had left it right there on the table before I flew to Chicago. Ava was seething, her jaw set tight. Ethan reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ava, maybe we should just come clean and go public with our relationship." Ava snapped her head up. "What are you talking about?" "It's the only way to kill the scandal," Ethan argued. "James isn't answering, which means he's clearly abandoned you. We need to take control of the narrative. Since he's obviously not coming back, we should—" Ava cut him off before he could finish. "No, we can't do that. Not now." I watched them from the corner, genuinely surprised by her hesitation. I had assumed they had been waiting for this for years, so I expected her to jump at the chance. But she refused. I saw a flash of resentment cross Ethan's face. "Ava, Don't tell me you actually have feelings for him. Ethan sneered. You only married him to get your parents off your back, remember? I felt a pang of hollow sadness. He was right. I had always known our marriage was just a box for her to tick. It took 3 years of relentless pursuit before she even agreed to go on a date with me. After we graduated, I stayed in Los Angeles specifically because I was terrified she would leave me. I worked every freelance gig I could find, saving every penny so I could eventually give her the wedding of her dreams. When I finally proposed, Ava barely even looked at the ring. James, I don't care about big ceremonies. Let's just go to the courthouse and have a quiet dinner. Keep it simple. I was crushed, but the excitement of finally calling her my wife made me push those feelings aside. I simply nodded and went along with whatever she wanted. On the day we got married at the courthouse, I couldn't stop smiling. I managed to sneak a selfie of us while she wasn't looking, and I later had it professionally printed and tucked it away in the back of my favorite album. I wasn't very close with her parents, but whenever we spoke, they would always tell me to look after her. Now that I was gone, Ava was technically a widow. The word widow felt so heavy and wrong. I could only imagine how her family would react when they found out I was gone. Ava took a deep breath and whispered, "Just give me some time to think." Ava, if you keep stalling, the firm is going to cut you loose to save themselves, Ethan warned. His desperation was starting to pique my interest. Were the photos really that damaging? Or was it the fact that they had been having a full-blown affair for months? Nothing else explained why the situation had escalated so quickly. Ava stood her ground and escorted Ethan to the door. As soon as she sat back down, her phone began to ring. I leaned over to look at the screen. The caller ID said James. That was impossible. I was dead. There was no way I was calling her. She answered with her usual icy tone. James, are you finished with your little game yet? Is this the family of James Miller? This is Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Miller's surgery was unsuccessful and he passed away earlier today. We need you to come in and handle the necessary arrangements. I heard the voice clearly from the other end of the line. The hospital must have found my phone, charged it, and searched for my emergency contacts. I had her saved in my phone as wife, which is why they were able to reach her so easily. As the news hit her, the color drained from Ava's face, leaving her looking like a ghost. Hello, are you still there? The voice asked. I'm here, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible. You're saying he died during the surgery? After a brief pause, the voice continued. Yes, the tumor was too advanced. He had insisted he had no family and signed a consent forms himself. We need someone to come and collect his remains. When the call ended, Ava stood there trembling, clearly trying to process that this wasn't some elaborate joke. I watched as she finally snapped into action, grabbing her purse and bolting out the door. An invisible force seemed to tether me to her, pulling me along as she traveled to Chicago. 3 hours later, in the cold silence of the hospital morgue, Ava finally looked at my body and realized the truth. I was gone. Seeing my own corpse was a shock. My head was completely bald, and the long, jagged surgical incision across my scalp looked like a hideous centipede stitched into my skin. The last thing I remembered from being alive was the anesthesia taking hold. I recalled the surgeon whispering in my ear, "Stay with us, James. Let's make a miracle happen." I had given him a faint smile before the world faded to black. In those final moments, I thought that dying in my sleep wouldn't be the worst way to go. At least the pain would finally stop. I suppose I was lucky in a way. The disease moved fast enough that I didn't have to suffer for years. My only regret was not being able to finalize the divorce and truly be free of Ava before I died. I had made a plan before the surgery. If I lived, I would travel the world and leave all my misery behind. If I died, I accepted that too. I had already donated my entire savings to charity. I came into this world with nothing, and I was fine leaving with nothing. Looking at my own body under that white sheet, I felt a strange sense of peace. So that's what I looked like at rest. Aside from the terrible haircut, I didn't look too bad. Ava collapsed the moment she saw me. When she finally woke up, she was eerily silent as she began making the arrangements for my cremation. She finalized the paperwork and carried my urn back to our house in Los Angeles. Seeing her walking around like a hollowed-out shell of a person, I sighed. Just scatter me anywhere, Ava. Let it go. Let me be free to travel with the wind. Don't waste your tears. I knew the risks of the surgery. Now that I'm gone, you're finally free to be with Ethan. Ethan was nowhere to be found, though he called her dozens of times. Ava ignored every single one. I watched her and wondered if she was actually mourning me, or if she was just mourning the loss of her perfect, curated life. Part of me wanted to leave, but the invisible tether kept me by her side. She eventually chose a beautiful plot for me in a quiet, high-end cemetery with a stunning view of the hills. It was expensive, and she paid for it all herself. She even insisted on buying a double plot for us. Personally, I found the idea a bit depressing. I would have much preferred to spend eternity alone. I suppose I didn't have much room to complain since she was the one paying for it. On the day of the funeral, Ava was the only person there. Her eyes were swollen and bloodshot, but she didn't utter a single sound. When she got home, she curled up on the sofa clutching a framed photo of me, refusing to eat or drink. It was almost comical. What was she trying to prove? I was already dead. There was no one left for her to impress with her grief. I just couldn't understand her behavior. 3 days later, I was desperate to leave, but every time I reached the front door, that invisible force would jerk me back into the house. It seemed I was stuck as long as she was. Ava, please, just go somewhere. I pleaded, standing right in front of her and waving my hands. I have a whole world to see. Suddenly, her gaze snapped directly to where I was standing. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I jumped back in terror. Ava, I whispered, but her gaze quickly clouded over and drifted away. She hadn't actually seen me. Before finally leaving the house, Ava spent hours going through my belongings. She packed almost everything into boxes, except for a single journal hidden in the back of the bookshelf. I felt a surge of anxiety as I followed her into the study. Then I remembered that it didn't matter anymore. I was dead. There were no more secrets to keep. She pulled the journal from the shelf and began to flip through the pages. Within seconds, her eyes began to well up with tears. I had titled the journal days with Ava. It was a chronicle of our entire relationship, with the final entry written just before I left for my surgery in Chicago. March 1st. Ava actually looked at me today. It's good to know she still remembers I exist. March 4th. I waited outside her class for 2 hours, and she finally agreed to grab dinner with me. March 5th. Ava said she's too busy for me and told me to stop wasting my time. I'm hurt, but I'm not giving up on her yet. I watched as Ava broke down, clutching the journal to her chest and sobbing until she could barely breathe. I sighed and blew a gentle breath toward her. A sudden draft swept through the room, making the curtains flutter. Ava gasped and looked around the empty room. James? Is it you? Are you here? She collapsed onto the floor, looking as fragile as a porcelain doll. I just shrugged my spectral shoulders. All of that was in the past now, and the anger had left me long ago. A week later, Ethan showed up at the house. He looked horrified when he saw her. Ava, look at you. What have you done to yourself? Ava just shook her head, refusing to speak. Listen to me, Ava. The firm has made its decision, but if you just give up now, everything you've worked for is gone. He dropped a stack of papers on the table. It was a formal termination notice along with a demand for damages. Ava didn't even look at the papers. She just stared at him and said, "It was you." Ethan froze. What are you talking about? Ava slid my phone across the table toward him. I couldn't figure out why James was so desperate for a divorce, or why he went to Chicago alone. But I see it now. It was all because of you. You were the one sending him those photos every single day, weren't you? No one else had access to those images or that burner number. Ethan stood there, speechless. He knew exactly how damaging those photos were. She sank back to the floor, her voice a hollow whisper. That's why he begged me to come home early that day. He wanted to tell me he was sick. But you forced me to stay at that party, telling me that his birthday wasn't important. James must have felt so utterly alone when he left. Ethan, you are absolutely repulsive. Ethan stood in silence for a long minute before letting out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, give a rest, Ava. You're the biggest hypocrite of all. You never loved the guy, so why are you playing the grieving widow now? Are you actually trying to defend his honor? The only thing you ever cared about was your title and your paycheck, he shouted, grabbing her by the shoulders. We had a deal to climb the ladder together. Now you're throwing it all away for a ghost. Look at yourself. He dragged her into the bathroom and shoved her in front of the mirror. The woman staring back was unrecognizable. Her face was gaunt, with deep dark circles under her eyes, looking like a shell of her former self. Ava let out a dry, broken laugh. Ethan, I've always known we were just using each other. But James, he was never greedy. He wasn't like us. Ethan was taken aback before bursting into laughter. Greedy? Is that really what you think of me? You want to talk, acting so high and mighty. We both know exactly what you did to get that corner office. Ava's eyes flared with rage. You only dated the CEO's daughter to fast-track your promotion, Ethan. Don't think for a second I didn't see through you. I made a mistake, but at least I tried to fix it. Ethan, we used each other, and we're even. But let me tell you something. Your career was always the only thing that mattered to you. I'm just done letting you drag me down with you. I've already hired a PR firm to handle the internet trolls, but you need to release a formal statement. If you stay silent, the entire San Francisco deal is going to collapse. I need you to think about the bigger picture. Ava stared at him with cold, dead eyes. Get out. Ethan didn't budge. Give me an answer, Ava. I can't let this slip away. You know how many years I've spent clawing my way to the top. I'm not letting my career be destroyed by some petty drama. Ava finally snapped and slapped him across the face with everything she had. If you hadn't been harassing him with those photos, he never would have made that post. The slap echoed through the room. Ethan's eyes turned murderous, and he shoved Ava so hard she flew backward onto the floor. I lunged forward to stop him, but my hand just passed right through his chest. Ethan, how dare you? Ava screamed from the floor. Ethan looked down at her with pure disgust. Oh, now you're the victim? Give me a break. You let me on for months. Don't act like I'm the only one who wanted this. Stop acting like a saint. We all know the real reason you got promoted. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and threw it at her. Sign the statement, or I'm taking you down with me. Intrigued, I crouched down to read the paper. My ghostly heart sank. It was a written confession in Ava's handwriting from her college years. Apparently, she had been caught in a scandal with a married professor and was forced to sign this to avoid expulsion. She had been caught by the man's girlfriend and labeled a homewrecker. I backed away, shaking my head in disbelief. Any lingering sympathy I had for her vanished in that instant. I thought back to how I had chased her for 3 years, only to be rejected over and over. Then, the night before my birthday, she had shown up at my door with a bruised face. I asked who did it, and she just claimed it was an accident. There had been rumors all over campus, but I was so blinded by my love for her that I ignored them all. When she finally agreed to be my girlfriend that night, I was so happy I didn't ask any more questions. Looking back, I was nothing more than a convenient rebound, a safety net she used to hide from the fallout of her own scandals. I had been a complete fool. I drifted into the bedroom to escape the sound of her sobbing. All I wanted was to be free of this place. And if I could, I really wanted to change the inscription on that double tombstone. Where was the lawyer? I had paid a premium for his services, and I was starting to lose patience. Sitting alone in the bedroom, the sound of Ava's wailing in the next room was giving me a ghostly headache. During that week, news of my death finally leaked to the public, sparking a fresh wave of outrage. Headlines like "Top Executive Cheats While Husband Dies Alone" were trending everywhere, and the internet was absolutely ruthless. The backlash hit her like a tidal wave. Her company's website was flooded with angry comments. "How can you employ someone with such a lack of morals?" one person wrote. "Her private life is a disaster. She has no business being in leadership," said another. "Poor James Miller, cheated on and left to die alone from a brain tumor." Reading the comments, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The fiery love I had felt as a teenager had finally burned out into cold ash. By the time the police arrived at the house, Ava was unconscious from a mix of alcohol and pills. Her company had called for a welfare check when she didn't show up. I followed the ambulance to the hospital. It turned out she had tried to end it all, still clutching my journal as she drifted off. Luckily for her, the paramedics arrived just in time to stabilize her. The moment she opened her eyes in the ICU, she lunged toward me. "James, I know you're here. Mr. Miller has been dead for over a week now." A sharp, professional voice interrupted. I turned around to see my lawyer, looking as impeccably dressed as ever. "Ms. Thompson, I'm the legal representative for the estate of James Miller. I have several matters to discuss with you." The mention of my death made Ava hysterical. "No, it's a lie." She collapsed onto the floor, her eyes wide with terror. "We aren't divorced. He can't just leave me." "Ms. Thompson," the lawyer said calmly, "Mr. Miller retained my services to handle the dissolution of your marriage before he entered surgery. His final instructions were to set both of you free. He compiled a complete file of the evidence regarding your affair with Ethan Davis. He explicitly requested that you no longer use this marriage to anchor him." Ava remained on the floor for a long time before letting out a broken, hollow laugh. "You really did it, James. You finally left me for good. Mr. Miller gave you countless chances to save this marriage. Ms. Thompson, you chose not to take them. I had spent a lot of money on this lawyer, and in this moment he was worth every cent. My only goal was a clean break, even in death. Seeing the lawyer work, I knew I had made the right choice. He was clinical and brutal, and each word seemed to rip right through her." Ava was in total denial, her mental state rapidly deteriorating. The lawyer simply placed a stack of documents on her bedside table. "The house has been foreclosed upon as part of the estate settlement and will be auctioned shortly. I suggest you begin packing your belongings immediately." From the moment I realized the truth about her and Ethan, I knew I was done. I had been the only one putting effort into our marriage for 3 years while she treated me like an inconvenience. In a twisted way, my illness was a gift. Death was the only exit I had left. I watched Ava drown in her own guilt and regret, but I realized that I didn't feel anything for her anymore. Not even pity. The lawyer worked fast. Within a few months, the house was sold at auction and Ava was evicted. However, she shocked me by using the last of her savings to buy the property back. Once she was back in the house, Ava made a public statement on social media. She admitted to the affair with Ethan Davis and, in a final act of scorched earth, leaked all the evidence of his professional misconduct and past scandals. The two of them engaged in a brutal public war of words. Ava didn't care about her own reputation anymore. She exposed every dirty secret in the industry and took the entire firm down with her. Ethan was terminated immediately, and the firm's stock plummeted as they scrambled to do damage control. The public watched the drama unfold like a reality show, with most people concluding that Ava Thompson was the villain of the story. When the dust finally settled, she sat alone in the empty house, clutching my old journal. She spent hours staring at my photo before finally swallowing a handful of sleeping pills. In her final moments, her eyes seemed to find me standing in the corner of the room, and a small, hopeful light flickered in her gaze. I didn't say a word. I simply turned my back on her and walked away into the light. I was finally free. Meeting you was the greatest misfortune of my life. I can only hope that in whatever comes next, our paths never cross again. You cannot force a heart to love you if it remains cold. And I realized I had to find a man I used to be before I gave everything away to Ava Davis. When James Miller finally turned his back on the past, it was not an admission of defeat, but a long overdue rescue mission for his own dignity. You should never wait until you are at the very end of your life to finally start showing some compassion to the version of yourself that is covered in invisible scars.